It's a morning.
Oops, sorry.
All right, I'd like to start with a story which perhaps you've heard before. And this is about a priest who was obsessively worried about his sins. It just consumed him uh, in his prayers, in everything he did during the day, and it was really affecting his health and his peace of mind. And he learned about a rabbi who lived nearby. And rumor had it that this rabbi would speak with God every day. And so the priest thought, well, I must go and talk to this rabbi because maybe he can talk with God about me. So he went, and the rabbi was very welcoming to him. And the priest said, oh, Rabbi, the next time that you speak with God, would you please ask him, has he forgiven my sins? And the rabbi said, well, fine, I'll be happy to do that for you. So some days passed, and the priest came back very anxious to know if God had heard the request and if he had answered. And when he got there, the rabbi was very excited. And he said, yes, I spoke with God about you. And the priest said, well, has God forgiven my sins? And the rabbi paused a minute and he said, well, no. And the priest got more worried. And the rabbi said, God said he's forgotten your sins. So we are often so worried about our transgressions and the things that we don't manage to do that we would like to do and that we know that we should do. And the story for this week about the 10 devotees, the wise devotees and the foolish devotees, it also makes us ask ourselves, well, which one am I? Am I the wise one? Am I the foolish one? Well, we have some examples of the wise devotee. Perhaps the greatest in our path of self-realization is Rajarsi Janakananda, who came to Master already a very successful and self-made person. And Rajarsi, so Master said, realized God in a very short amount of time. In fact, in the shortest possible amount of time, according to the scriptures, which I think was 6 years. It might have been 12, but I think it was 6. And when Master spoke about him and about his journey to self realization, Master said he arrived quickly because he did everything that I asked him. Oh my. So when we think about ourselves and how much Master has instructed us to do in every aspect of our lives. So have we done everything that Master has asked us? Well, Master gives us a lot of consolation when he tells us that even if we follow 1% of what he has asked us to do, we will find God. So that has always been comforting to me. In fact, I always thought it was 10%. And the last time I mentioned that in a public in a public space, someone corrected me and said, "No, Master said 1%." And I said, "Find me the citation." And that I really want to know, and they sent it to me, and it's true. So that is a very, very comforting thing. One thing that Jesus said to his disciples at the Last Supper, he said to them, if you are my disciples, don't just praise me, saying, Lord, Lord, but do what I tell you to do. So now, are we the wise devotees? Are we the foolish devotees? Do we fail sometimes to follow our guru's instructions? And are we like that worried priest, just full of guilt about our failures? Well, friends, no one in any area of life has ever been a success, has ever achieved anything without their path being full of failures, whether it's in art or science, in academics or business or spiritually, because failure is a very important part of our path to achievement if we understand it properly. You know, Master was a contemporary of Walt Disney, and Swami was as well. And Master had great admiration for Walt Disney for many reasons. And one of them was because of Walt Disney's determination to overcome difficulties and failures. I read a story, actually, the story of Walt Disney is a part of the Life Force trilogy. I think it's in the third book on magnetism. And Walt Disney always wanted to be into film, and he started an animation company. And very soon, within a year or two, that company went bankrupt. He then designed an animation, and it was a mouse. And he presented that mouse to 300 different companies, and he received 300 rejections. But he was not dejected. He just kept going, and Mickey Mouse is the most famous cartoon in the entire world. During the war, his animation studio went bankrupt again, but he was not discouraged. He came back and developed the Disneylands, the Disney worlds, and over almost 1 billion people have visited and enjoyed this light-heartedness. And Master very much admired that. And I know that Swami really loved the original Walt Disney films for their amazing creativity and for their sensitivity. Perhaps some of you know that Swami's favorite movie was, who could fill in the blank?
Bambi? Was it Bambi?
His favorite movie was Bambi. What was his second favorite movie?
No, Walt Disney. Walt Disney.
Walt Disney. Second favorite Walt Disney movie. You probably don't know. Is I know because we watched it with him many times. His second favorite movie was Cinderella.
Ah,
And he was just very, very touched, by the characters, the way that Disney developed the characters and the moral of the story. But Disney, we could say, failed many times. But as Master said, he used those failures as stepping stones to success. Master tells us, or Swami does, about Thomas Edison, in discovering the filament for the light bulb. He failed over 2,000 times. And when a journalist asked him, how do you feel about 2,000 failures? His answer was, they have been 2,000 steps closer to success. Now, these are the attitudes that we need to take as devotees. In our times, we have an example, and it's not a perfect one. I'm not going to get into politics, but Elon Musk is a extremely creative and inventive person who has had many failures of his space shuttles, many failures in features of the electronic car. And yet he continues because he feels inwardly that these are important steps for the future of humanity. Now, not only in these fields have people failed and gone on to success, but also in the spiritual field. And interestingly, our master, failed in something very important. And I think you probably remember this from the autobiography of a yogi. Young Mukunda had this great desire to go to the Himalayas, and he wasn't successful as a young man. But when he was living in the ashram of his guru, Swami Sri Yukteswar, he asked his guru, would you give me your blessing so that I can go to the Himalayas and find the great yogis and learn from them? Now, do you remember what Sri Yukteswar said to him? He said something like, the wisdom that you are seeking will not come to you from the cold stone of mountains. I'm paraphrasing. It was something like that. So Mukunda clearly knew that he did not have his master's blessing, but he ignored that and he went. And he had his experiences there, which make up a very interesting part of his autobiography. And then he came back to the ashram. Now, it seems in reading the autobiography that he was gone for a few days, or a few weeks, and he learned his lessons and came back. The reality is that Mukunda was gone for many months in the Himalayas, and then he came back. And how do we say it? Like a dog with his tail
Tail.
between his legs. I'm not up anymore on English uh, idioms. Uh, and he was somewhat guilty, and remorseful that he had not followed his guru's instructions. And he asked for his master's forgiveness. And his master said, what is there to forgive? I have no expectations of you. So why would I be disappointed? So if our master, could have, let's say, this transgression of following his spiritual master, let's look at ourselves perhaps in a different light. Now, this story about the 10 virgins, the wise and the foolish, I draw from it a very practical lesson. And, Master said that scripture should be useful, not only for the spiritual journey, but also practically. And a lesson that I draw from it is that the wise devotees were prepared. They planned ahead. Now, of course, there's a very deep moral to this, which we heard in the reading, which I'll come back to at the end of my talk. But just think about it. They were there, waiting for the bridegroom to come, and they were fully prepared. They not only had their lamps, but they had oil in their lamps, and the wick on the lamp was prepared. The foolish virgins were not prepared. What lessons does that hold for us? Well, I think many times we are hopeful about success in the spiritual life, success of our meditations and our sadhana and the things that we do. But we are not fully prepared to fail. And we need to be prepared because any serious, difficult undertaking is going to include times, and perhaps many of them, when we do not succeed and when perhaps we actually fall flat on our face. And I think that as we proceed on our spiritual path, we need to accept from the outset and every day that we are going to fail, but that we are not failures. It's just like somebody painting on a canvas, and perhaps somebody comes up when the canvas is half finished and criticizes it and says, oh, well, these colors and these shapes, they don't make any sense. There's no real story or perspective here. And the artist would say, it's not finished yet. And we're not finished yet. We are in a process, and that process is going to include failure. A wise business person making a business plan plans for potential failures. And they have perhaps plan B or plan C so that they're flexible when that happens. I think for us, it's important that we anticipate that there will be moments when we don't live up to our own expectations of ourselves. Let's always remember what Swami Sri Yukteswar said. I don't have expectations of you. But we have expectations of ourselves, and we're going to fall short because we haven't yet achieved the goals that we want to. I remember many years ago when I was responsible for planning what we called the Joy Tours. I mean, this was in the 1970s, the early 1970s, when Swami went out with 14 people, 2 vans, a motor home, a singing group, and we toured, I think it was 16 cities and 4,000 or 6,000 miles across the United States, including coming to Dallas and then going on up into New York and then up into Canada and so forth. Well, I was on one of those tours, and then the next one, I was charged with the responsibility of planning it, of setting it up. And I did my best, and it was a huge thing, and it was amazing. In these moments, inspiration and help come. But about a week before the group was to arrive in New York City, I think it was a phone call from the church in New York where we had publicized the programs, and the roof had fallen down, fallen in to the church, and they couldn't give that place to us. So was there any time to bemoan the thought that, oh my, I'm a failure? That certainly would have been counterproductive. That was the moment to realize this is part. If it's going to be a success, there's going to be these obstacles and challenges, and we just need to get in there and find another place, which we did. And somehow there were people outside of the church telling people where to go and so forth. So we want to be prepared that there are going to be moments when we don't meet up to our own expectations. Now, how can we turn this around? Because failure is an extremely important part of success. What if everything we did was a success? I mean, how would we learn? How would we grow? How would we get to higher dimensions? Okay? We need to keep moving up the bar and to keep trying, and failure gives us that opportunity. I'd like to read to you a couple phrases from Master's original edition of the Laws of Success, which he published in 1944 with the title Attributes of Success. And this is an excerpt that has always been very meaningful to me personally. He writes, even failures should act as stimulants to your willpower and to your material and spiritual growth. Weed out the causes of failure and with double vigor launch what you wish to accomplish. The season of failure is the best time for sowing seeds of success. Every new effort after failure must be well planned and charged with increasing intensity of intention and with dynamic willpower. So let's remember, especially this one phrase, the season of failure is the best time for sowing seeds of success. How do we as devotees fail or disappoint ourselves? Maybe we don't meditate as often or as much or as deeply as we want to. Perhaps our perhaps we have qualities that are not stellar qualities. Perhaps we're prone to anger or to fear or to worry or to judgment. There are so many opportunities, let's say, for not passing muster, for not meeting up to the gold standard that we know is there because Master tells us what that standard is. So when we disappoint ourselves, that is the moment when we need, as Master says, to make a new effort. And it needs to be well planned and charged with increasing intensity of attention and dynamic willpower. So if we're not meditating deeply, and this is a pain to our soul, which of course it is, if we dedicate little time and our practices are superficial, what should we do? Well, feeling guilty, we know, is no use. It's counterproductive. But taking that moment and with a calm mind and with a higher state of consciousness, to ask our higher self, to ask God and Guru, okay, why is it that I'm not meditating deeply? Why am I restless? What is it that I can do to improve in this area? This is the time to practice introspection. Now, very often, almost always, the ego doesn't the ego doesn't want us to see either our victories or our failures. The ego forces us to hide from our failures and from our disappointments, maybe to pretend that they aren't there, or to say, well, I'll think about it another time. But this is the moment to practice one of the most important exercises that Master has suggested to us, and that is the practice of introspection, of analyzing, of coming to both a conscious and a superconscious understanding, or at least perception. And once we ask the right question, Master, universe, why am I not able to meditate longer, deeply, more thirsty, with more passion, with more devotion? When we're asking the right question, when we accept that we are not meeting up to the standard, that we want for ourselves, the universe is going to answer. And Master, God, and gurus are going to help us understand why and what the solutions are. But for the practice of introspection, it takes courage. It takes self-honesty. It's not an easy practice. And this is why the next book that I'm writing right now is on the practice of introspection. And the working title of the book is Know Thyself, a practical guide to introspection. I'm really excited about this. I want to read you, I think, is it okay? Do I have a few minutes still? Yes, I'd like to read you what Master says about the practice of introspection. And introspection is what I consider to be one of the four major minor practices on our path. Our major practices are energization, concentration, meditation, and Kriya. But we have supplemental practices that are very important for our spiritual growth. And they are silence, question mark. They are chanting, affirmation, prayer, and introspection. And this is what Master says. Introspection is a mirror in which to see the portions of your mind which otherwise would remain hidden from you. Okay, this is how Maya works. I'm saying this now. Yeah, so parentheses. This is how Maya works. It hides us from ourselves. Okay, all right. Master again. It is never too late to diagnose your failures and sort out your good and bad tendencies. Analyze what you are, what you wish to become, and what tendencies or shortcomings are impeding you, so that you can make yourself what you should be and what you want to be. In working toward that end, use initiative as well as willpower. So introspection is what Master calls one of the great secrets of progress, both spiritually and materially. So I'd like to give you a suggestion, a way that you can perhaps begin a practice of introspection. We're the last month of the year, and it's a good time to take stock of ourselves and of what we have accomplished and what we have not yet accomplished. And choose one thing that is most troubling to you in your spiritual life. And take that into introspection. At the end of meditation, just take some time, hold that up, ask God and Guru, what is it? What is impeding me? What bad tendency or habits are impeding me in this particular practice? And then make some notes from day to day, because as we continue to ask the right question, God and gurus and the universe itself continue to give us the answers. So I'd like to go back now to conclude to the story of the 5 wise and the 5 foolish devotees. What is the main moral of the story, which was very clear stated by Swami in today's reading? It's the difference between the container and the contents. The container being the outward things that we do, the rules that we follow, the rituals, the fire ceremonies, the mantras, or even our meditation and our Kriya practice. That could all be just a container, the lamp without the oil. But what is the oil? That oil is our love of God, our love of gurus, our love of truth, our love of the spiritual path. And love is above the law. And I'd like to leave you with this story from the New Testament, which you will all remember. There was a great saint, disciple of Jesus. They were all great, but this was St. Peter. And when Jesus was taken from Gethsemane, as he had predicted, Peter denied knowing him 3 times. Now, Master says that treachery against the guru is the greatest of all spiritual sins. And Peter, who was one of the most important of the direct disciples, the apostles of Jesus, committed this great sin, this failure, this mistake. Now, when Jesus resurrected, he spent some time and he visited the disciples. And the very last time he visited them was at the Sea of Galilee at a little fishing town called Tubga. I visited there. It's a very powerful place. And this is when the disciples were out fishing. Do you remember this story? And were fishing all night. That's when fishermen fish. And just at dawn, they had not caught anything, like the very beginning of the story of their discipleship. But at dawn, they saw a man on the shore, and he was calling out to them. And they wondered who this could be. And John, the beloved, immediately recognized him. And he said, "It's our Lord, it's Jesus Christ." And Peter, who was always the impulsive one, the passionate one, he immediately dove into the water, to the shore, and embraced Jesus. Now, Jesus had prepared a breakfast for them. He had fish and bread, he had made a fire, and they had a meal together. And as they were eating, do you remember this? It's so touching. Jesus turns to Peter and he says, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter says, "Yes, Lord, of course I love you." And after some time, Jesus again says, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter says, "Lord, yes, I told you, you know, I love you." And a third time, Jesus asks the question, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter responds again, "Yes, Lord, I love you." And so the 3 times that he had denied knowing Jesus, through love, through his love for Jesus and the love of Jesus for him, that great treachery was forgiven. And Peter, went on to become a great realized soul. So I hope some of these thoughts will be helpful to us, especially in the season when we're tuning in to the love and the promise, as you said, when you lit the candles this morning for the first 2 weeks of Advent. And we'll do our best. Master said, God does not expect for us to succeed. He just expects for us to keep trying and to keep loving him as he loves us. So thank you very much for being with me this
Thank you.
day.
Thank you so much.
And if you have any comments, I think we have just a few moments, or Maitri, I leave it to you now.
Yeah, we have about 15 minutes or so, of which we would open it up for questions here, both online and in person. If you're online, you can, we also encourage those online to open their cameras so Shivani can see you a little bit more and we can see you. And then if you have anything you want to put in the chat, you can, or you can ask directly. And those here in the room, we have a mic here, mic stand near me. You can, if you come up to the mic to ask your question. So we'll pause here for a moment. That was a beautiful, beautiful talk. Thank you for sharing that, Shivani, and look forward to your new book. When do you think that will come out? Do we have any?
Well, it it still has to come out through me.
It's a great
So
talk.
and I'm hoping to be finished by the 1st of March, but it's just like being, pregnant. It has its own time. And I must say, just to share something with you, just in terms of failures and whatever, I had a very good approach to this book because I've been teaching this for like 50 years, and we do an end of the year introspection. And I mean, I've had it together for decades in terms of teaching this. And so I thought I would just use the approach I always had and just turn it into a book so that people could practice introspection, not just at the end of the year, which is almost impossible to do. Who can remember a day, much less a year? And to make it anyway, uh, it just wasn't working. I did, and I wrote, and I did all kinds of things, but it's like it wasn't flowing. I didn't have the passion. And so I just let it sit a while, because I just did a book tour in Italy. The Healing with Life Force first volume just was published in Italian.
Mm.
And so I did a book tour, and now it's Christmas. So I said, I'll let it, I'll just, put it on a shelf. And just about every day, inspiration would come. And now I have an entirely different understanding of
Mm.
what this book, how it can be most useful to people. And now I feel it, you know. So
Mm.
I'm going to go into seclusion for about 5 or 6 weeks in January and February. And I think, well, we'll see how it is. But then after that, it has to go through so many hoops, you know. Yeah, it'll be edited, and then all sorts of things, proofread, laid out. Anyway, I think it's scheduled in 2026.
Ah, sounds good. Well, that's good because I'm still digesting healing with life force. So I
Well,
think
listen,
Mark is.
yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
Mark is here for a question. Oh, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, it's not my question. It's just one of the online folks direct messaged me to ask you to repeat the four primary and the four secondary practices,
On our
spiritual
path.
practices on our path.
Okay, let me first say this is entirely my construct. All right. This is nothing that Master has ever said or Swami has ever said. This is my understanding. So, on our path, there are four main practices: energization exercises, concentration using the mantra Hong Sa, the practice of meditation, dhyana, with the Om technique. And the fourth one is the practice of Kriya and the various Kriyas. Then the supplemental uh, techniques that Master has emphasized are chanting, right? Chanting is half the battle. The practice of affirmation, Master's book, Scientific Healing Affirmations, and Swami's book, The Importance of Affirmation. And in Life Force Volume 2, there's a lot about the importance of it. The third one was prayer, And that's also in the second volume, what Master calls prayer demand. And the fourth is the practice of introspection. Okay. And there's probably others, but these are what I consider to be the principal ones.
All right.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Now, anybody else with a question, comment, online,
I'll get out of the way.
in person? Can you give us a little broader view, Mark, so we
Yeah.
have a little broader view here of our group? So, I'll just make a quick comment. I I loved hearing about Walt Disney because before I even got on this path, and once I got on the path and sort of knew the concept of guru, I always considered Walt Disney my first guru. So it's sort of funny that, because I grew up as a child with that world, right?
Yeah.
And I remember when I lived at Ananda, I actually had this poster of Walt Disney, and he was standing up, leaning against a wall, and there was a shadow of Mickey Mouse behind him, and his eyes were right here at the spiritual eye. And I always thought that was a really cool poster.
Wow.
But and so I felt like once I got on the path and found out that there was some
Connection.
yeah, there I was like, oh, okay, so there's just another pole that I was tuning into. So, anybody else?
Yeah, I would love to see some more of you. And I would like you to know that my husband is with us tonight. You might
Oh,
see the little
wonderful,
name Arjuna Lucky.
wonderful.
That
And
when he's
we are
gonna
going to come. We are going to come to Assisi this summer. I don't know if you've heard the rumors of that,
No,
but
Arjuna will be very interested in that. There he is. He's waving to you all.
hello, Arjuna. Yeah,
Great. Okay. Atul also.
and yeah, you know Atul most recently. Yep,
Yeah,
there he
you
is.
were here with Usha, right?
I was there
Yes.
with Asha.
Yeah, but are you living in Dallas? By the way, we can stop the recording. Uh, are
I'm
uh,
in here. I'm
you're
in
in
Houston.
Houston.
Yeah,
Houston.
yeah. I'm here with Sonia. We're kind of turning. You're on a projector screen, and we're watching it
Ah,
together.